So by now I'm sure you've heard because, well, you know, people tend to make everything a big deal when they can, well, get something out of the deal themselves. By now you've heard, well, Peng Shuai and the story that, well, it was a story 3 years ago, but now it's major headline news in 2021. It's amazing. Things that happened in 2018 are now headline news in 2021. Now, if we're going to do that, then we got to be fair on all sides of the equation. And believe you me, I'll try to be fair. First off, if you haven't heard the news, Peng Shuai, a Chinese tennis star, was, well, she made a credible accusation that a former premier in China, in the current ruling party, sexually assaulted her in 2018. Now, why is this news, you say? Well, because after she made the accusation, she disappeared on the web. And, you know, speculation and assumptions started to swirl. Apparently, they thought that, well, the Communist Chinese Party had abducted her, kidnapped her, may have executed her, all kinds of things you were reading about online. And then, a week later, she reappeared. And, well, she didn't look like she had been abducted. Definitely didn't look like she had been killed. And, well, for all intents and purposes, she seemed pretty happy. Now, I know what you're thinking. Anybody as clever as the CCP party can orchestrate something. And, well, you wouldn't be wrong to think that. So, there were a set of demands that, well, the international community made in regards to Peng Shuai. And I'm here to tell you that all of those demands, except for the, well, most unreasonable of the unreasonable demands, were actually met and given to the international community. Now, you're hearing about the story again because, well, the WTA, the Women's Tennis Association, just decided to do something, well, very, well, I'll see what you think about it, because I have my own opinions. Anyway, the international community requested a video presentation where they could chat with and see Peng Shuai. And, well, that happened. And on this video chat, Peng Shuai was sharing what happened, how she was feeling. The international community got to ask questions, and she answered them. Now, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, felt satisfied after, well, having their video conference and chat with Peng Shuai, the person that, well, the internet had rumored was dead or in some Chinese torture camp. Heaven knows what was happening, you know. They got to see her at a buffet with her friends and family, eating and laughing and chatting it up. Now, any independent observer, I give you the request to go about and do this yourself. Any independent observer can go and look at that video. I know people in distress. I can see distress. Distress is not just what you verbally say. It's your physical body posture. It's everything from your facial muscles, everything. There are signs that you can clearly dictate whether somebody is being coerced or in distress. Now, I ask any independent observers to go and look at the interview, the IOC did and see if you see any type of physical coercion or distress in Peng's Shuai when she's speaking or when they're asking her questions. Now, you say, purple people have. I looked at it. But, you know, people can still be coerced. Okay. But now you're making an assumption. And that assumption, I would imagine, is based on some type of bias that you have. Maybe it's a bias towards or against something. Who knows? But based off of what the evidence is that we have available, there was no coercion or distress in looking at that video. And that's not my determination. That's the determination of the IOC. The International Olympic Committee said that they felt satisfied based off of the request that they made and what was provided. They got everything that they wanted, in essence. So, yesterday, the WTA decides that, well, they're not satisfied with what they've seen. And they believe that there's coercion. There's like, who knows, all kinds of theories are swirling around. They're just not satisfied. And they want to, well, protect their athlete. And for that reason, they suspended all of their tournaments, the WTA tournaments in China. Now, something smells fishy here. Hold that thought, because we're going to go to something else, and then we'll circle back around. And you'll see why I will circle back around. There's a reason for everything. I don't know if you're familiar with Sunni Lee. Sunni Lee is a gymnast here in the United States. And well, she just recently had an incident happen to her. You know, you've been hearing about Stop Asian Hate and all of those things, bigotry and hate crimes on the rise. Well, Sunni Lee, who just recently won the gold, silver, and bronze in Tokyo, was in the United States, in Los Angeles, hanging out with all of her female friends. She happens to be of Asian ancestry. Anyway, she said a car drove by, and they started yelling some racial epithets and tropes towards the Asian friends and herself. And she said somebody in the car pepper sprayed her arm. Now, this is a hate crime. And there was very little in the news about this story, especially here in the United States. There was maybe like 1 or 2 stories. And then that was it. I mean, here's a person who, during the Summer Olympics, won the United States a gold medal, a silver medal, and a bronze medal. Very talented gymnast. And literally 1 or 2 stories here and there. And that was it. Nothing more about Sunni Lee. Complete and utter disrespect. Complete and utter disrespect. The same as Peng Shuai. Complete and utter disrespect. You see, here's kind of what I'm getting at. I see kind of disrespect, a tale of disrespect, committed towards Asian women in both China and the United States. And both are trying to point the finger at each other to say, look who's more disrespectful when it comes to disrespecting Asian women. You've got Peng Shuai, who, well, alleges a serious sexual assault by a governing party member, a former governing party member. And you've got Sunni Lee on the streets of Los Angeles, just going to hang out with her girlfriends. And you've got a car that drives by and pepper sprays her. Now, the common thing you see in both of those things is disrespect of Asian women. Now, I'm not sure how one republic is trying to get the upper hand on the other republic in terms of, well, being the purveyor of respect for Asian women. We all know that's not the case. Also, let's go back to Peng Shuai now and this story. Remember, I said something smells fishy about the story. And the reason I said this is because, well, it was another instance of sexual assault that recently happened in China. Perhaps you haven't heard of the case of Alibaba. Now, there was a woman who worked for the company Alibaba, and she alleged that one of the executives, well, she was drinking and having fun, and they went home, and this executive, well, he didn't gain consent before, well, he raped her. Now, this story was talked about a little bit over the summer, but it sort of kind of died down and was swept under the rug. Now, what's the difference between the woman who alleged that an executive at Alibaba sexually assaulted her and Peng Shuai? Well, Alibaba is corporate, and Peng Shuai is accusing a political adversary. Now, that's the only difference. And perhaps maybe that's why the corporate media treated these two stories vastly different. You almost don't hear anything about the Alibaba case, whereas you're hearing everything about Peng Shuai. And I'm not saying that, well, that's a right or wrong thing. I'm just highlighting the difference. When somebody is accused in the corporate world of sexual assault, the corporate media doesn't really talk about it. But politically, when somebody gets accused of sexual assault, oh, the media is quick to gobble that shit up. It's like, wow, this is brand new sexual assault, and we really must do something about it. You know, the Me Too movement, you almost don't hear anything about it anymore. It was like all of these big wig corporate execs were getting outed for sexual assault, you know, just like in Alibaba. And that was too much. So you had to come in with a bunch of distractions and, well, something to take the eye off the prize, so to speak. And you know what those distractions were. It became political. It became, well, the left versus the right. No, it was a class thing, as I recalled it. It was a power dynamic between people who, well, didn't have as much power and people who had, well, a lot of power. And that's kind of Peng Shuai's situation. She alleged that, well, a former premier, a high-ranking official in the CCP party, has sexually assaulted her. Now, there goes somebody with a lot of power. Now, not to say that Peng Shuai, who's a tennis star, doesn't have a lot of power, but she doesn't have the political might behind her. And that's really the issue in society. Who really has the political power? You know, I can talk all I want about the great and lawful ideas of, well, socialism and communism. But if the individuals are flawed who are trying to implement those ideas, you're still going to have a flawed system. Remember, I know a lot of people don't like Mao Zedong, but, well, that's because they don't really actually know Mao Zedong. But Mao Zedong made a groundbreaking statement when he said that women hold half the sky. Personally, I think they hold about 80% of the sky, and men, well, hold about 20%, if that. But that's in the binary concept that Mao was speaking of. Mao didn't really go into, well, the non-binary concept, which would probably have women in non-binaries holding about 100% of the sky, and men not really being able to do anything. But That notwithstanding, we got to go back to old structures and look at old dynamics and see how those things are working out. You know, one of the criticisms that I've had the CCP party is you look at the screen and you see it's nothing but suits and ties. And that's really going to give you a bias towards something that's not prevalent in the society. You know, I talk all the time about intersectionality, or I refer to it, but don't ever mention it. When it comes to a philosophical framework, that's where I think the CCP party lacks. The framework of intersectionality. You see, you can have the goal of alleviating poverty and doing all of these things to make sure that capitalism doesn't go to hell in a handbasket, which is done in the Western society. But with intersectionality, you still have that lens towards marginalized communities. You still have that lens towards, hearing perspectives of people whose voices don't get amplified. And we know in this toxic masculinity-driven society and world that we currently are a part of, women's voices don't get amplified. They don't get recognized. And that's essentially the problem with the CCC party. That women's voices are not amplified. You just don't see it. You see a lot of suits and ties. Also, the problem in the United States. A tale of disrespect. That's what this really is. A tale of disrespect. And both sides trying to point the fingers at each other. You know, it kind of reminds me of, Newt Gingrich going after President Bill Clinton. You know, the Republicans and the Democrats back in the 90s. And Newt Gingrich is saying that Bill Clinton is so immoral. He's having sex with interns in the Oval Office. You know, he's doing all of these immoral things. And you gotta put me in charge. I'll be much better. Much better. I'll create a contract with America. We'll get in there and we'll clean up the house. We'll disinfect the House of Representatives. We'll give you good government. And then you learn that Newt Gingrich is also having sex with interns. It's called hypocrisy. And, there's a healthy dose of it in our society. Too much of it, in fact. You know, I can't really believe or trust a nation that gave Brock Turner 90 days in prison for raping an unconscious woman by a dumpster. I can't really trust a nation that had a whole entire prestigious elite university, Michigan State University, where for decades a medical physician that was known to be molesting gymnasts, underage girls, known to be doing that, torturing them. And yet, the president of the university, USA Gymnastics, the FBI, none of them did anything. And they all knew. So when I see Steve Simon from the WTA say this is not about money, this is about protecting women, you're saying that on the backdrop of the United States Supreme Court about to overturn Roe versus Wade. You see why there's so much hypocrisy with both China and the United States? It's about disrespect of, women, especially Asian women in our society. Sunni Lee, disrespected, pepper sprayed, called all types of names. Peng Shuai has to fight just to, give voice to women who are sexually assaulted by powerful men. Now, sports. We always say sports is not political. Sports is not political. But we're lying. Sports is very political. Sports is, well, about money. And money is political. People donate lots of money to people who have or share their same viewpoints. Now, the beauty about sports is, regardless of what your affiliation is, politically, your ideology, you can enjoy the competition of people in that craft and sport competing against each other to win. We can all enjoy that. Now, what it appears to me, and this is just an initial thought process, is that, well, somebody has this genuine concern about Peng Shuai and her health and well-being. But it seems like there's an advantageous movement up front also in the background to try to, well, gain some geopolitical points, so to speak. We shouldn't politicize international sports. Domestic sports are always rifled with politics. You have athletes making political statements, endorsing political candidates. There's no way around that. Going on political podcasts. There's no way around that. We all know it. But when it comes to the Olympics, each nation, each region, each country gets an opportunity to highlight the best athletes on the planet and let them compete against each other. It'd be a shame if we started politicizing the very thing that helped us end global wars. You know, we didn't have the Olympics until, well, we as a United Nations decided that we wanted to have something to enjoy globally, internationally. I think it's a slippery slope to go down when you start wanting to, well, get backhanded geopolitical points by, well, attacking a country that you don't want to necessarily go to because they're going to have the Olympics in February. I think that that's a very dangerous slope to go down because they'll do it back to us, and then somebody will do it back to another country they dislike, and therein lies the problem. You won't have the Olympics anymore. Now, Peng Shuai, two things can happen simultaneously here. There should be justice and accountability for the Peng Shuai situation. And there should be no politicization in the Olympics. We're having the Olympics in Beijing in 2022. Peng Shuai should have her justice met in 2021. That's the end of the story. And this tale of disrespect of the Asian woman, it's centuries long, from wars in Japan, when Japanese women were forced into prostitution and to be comfort women for soldiers, both Japanese soldiers and American soldiers. That tale of disrespect has continued. Asian women in China and America, their voices are never amplified. You will very rarely hear about Asian women in America and China being successful, being, well, builders and creators. Maybe that needs to change in both republics. You know, that'd be a change for the good. That is not masking and taping and trying to piece together things that don't exist. Whereas there's plenty of things that do exist in our society that maybe shouldn't, or maybe can be improved upon. Sunni in Los Angeles was disrespected. Peng Shuai in Beijing was disrespected. The common thing in both cases they were Asian women. In two republics that don't respect Asian women. You know, you can say stop Asian hate, but really, what we ought to say is start respecting Asian women. Thank you for listening.